What's the best strength training protocol? There isn't one you should use all the time. My chief recommendation is to keep the big picture in mind and train accordingly. In practice, that means alternating the two protocols. What's your goal in lifting weights? If you're trying to do what promotes physical well-being and to avoid what doesn't, the content of this video may help you. There are multiple ways of promoting physical well-being, including exercising or training for strength, exercising or training for fitness, ensuring sufficient sleep and recovery, regular stretching, and of course eating well. Food really is the best medicine. When it comes to weightlifting, whether you're a beginner or an expert, the best way to increase strength is to focus on the basic exercises, namely squats, deadlifts, and presses. An excellent book on that is The Barbell Prescription. I recommend it. It clearly explains why everyone who is physically able to lift weights should. Assuming your goal is physical well-being, what you do or don't do should be guided by the classical principle for medicine. First, do no harm. Don't make things worse. It's impossible occasionally to avoid doing harm unintentionally, but if you'll continue to educate yourself or follow the advice of an expert, the risks of weightlifting are minimal and probably less than if you didn't lift weights at all. Just as you want to avoid eating foods that undermine health, avoid doing exercises that risk injury unnecessarily, and perform every repetition of every exercise with perfect form. An excellent book on that is Starting Strength. I recommend it. I just recommended two excellent books. If you haven't read them and failed to note them, that's a sign that you're not open to learning. If that's the case, there's no point watching the rest of this video. What I'm recommending is based on my own personal experience. I have no relevant formal credentials. On the other hand, I've not only read a lot about using weights since high school, but since I retired from playing hockey well over 30 years ago, I've been lifting weights weekly in the same gym with the same training partner. Later this year, I'll begin my 80th year. I've personally tested lots of methods for gaining muscle and learned a lot about what doesn't work and about what does work. You might want to learn from my experience. Let's focus here just on your choice of overall protocol. Weightlifting is hard work. It's exhausting. Since energy is limited, it's critical to keep the idea of balancing energy in mind. We don't grow in the gym. Instead, we stimulate muscles to grow stronger by lifting weights and grow outside the gym between such bouts of stimulation. Proper nutrition and recovery are critical to success. The only way to maximize hard work in the gym is to work with your body rather than trying to force success. Trying to force success doesn't work in the long run. For example, you may know that Big Ronnie Coleman was one of the world's greatest bodybuilders ever. In fact, I think he was the best. And now he cannot even walk. Many champion bodybuilders have died young, and many weightlifters have had to stop lifting prematurely because of injuries. There's no reason to let anything like that happen to you. Everyone who lifts weights has a fundamental choice of which protocol to use. There are two options. Either you can do your utmost on each exercise or less than your best. It's that simple. The former is the familiar progressive overload protocol. The latter is the steady state protocol. My recommendation is to use both by switching them up. In other words, to cycle them. Use steady state for at least 1, 2.5, or 3 month cycle yearly. Beginning first-year weightlifters are usually able to lift more in a linear fashion each time they hit the gym. They should focus on the basic exercises like squats and deadlifts using perfect exercise form and on recovering well. They typically use the progressive overload system and can often go up 5 pounds per workout in a linear sequence for a few months. Each time on each exercise, they may be able either to add weight or at least to add another additional rep or two. Young men in particular are often in a hurry to build muscle quickly. As a result, they may be tempted to push through minor pain or use less than excellent exercise form to hit their workout goals. Bad moves. Not only doesn't that linear progression last very long, but those who succumb to the temptation to train as intensely as possible usually don't last very long. How many males in their late teens or 20s work out for a couple of years, get injured, and never lift weights again? In my experience, most males have tried lifting weights, and few last more than 3 or 4 years. It doesn't seem to occur to most people who are 25 that they might want to still be lifting weights when they're 75. So, my recommendation is not to use the progressive overload system all the time. There's no wisdom in going to failure or near failure on every exercise during every workout. It's counterproductive. Cycle in at least one steady state cycle for at least 2.5 or 3 months each year. 2 would probably be better. An important reason for recommending that is that moving a weight requires more than muscle. It requires tendons and ligaments, as well as bones and energy. We can experience muscular sensations, such as when we get a pump. However, we do not experience somatic sensations from connective tissues or bones until they're injured. As a result, it's impossible to know when they're near their straining or breaking point. That's why so many athletes who use anabolic steroids to train more frequently often suffer injuries to connective tissues, even though they didn't feel anything that was being strained. Anabolic steroids work for muscular growth, but they don't make connective tissues stronger. Because I've no experience with them, I could be wrong about that. For multiple reasons, though, I encourage you not to use them. When I was a young man, nobody ever heard of anything like someone breaking or snapping a pectoral or bicep tendon. So, how might this protocol recommendation work in practice? Let's take an example. Suppose that you're now using the usual progressive overload system. Last workout, your goal was 5 sets of squats of 5 reps each straight across with 185 pounds. You actually hit on those 5 sets, 5 reps, 5 reps, 5 reps, 5 reps, and 2 reps. You fail on the 3rd rep of the 5th set. Next time, you want to hit at least 3 reps, if not 4 or 5 on that final set. If you get it, you'll add 5 pounds to the bar next time. You'll psych up as usual before the next workout in order to try to hit your new goal. In other words, your plan or protocol is to progress a little more each time. In a few months, you may be able to do 5 sets of 5 reps with 225 on squats. Of course, that can be psychologically draining. Not every workout are you likely to feel like working that intensely. Worse, you could be progressing too fast for your connective tissues, which you won't feel until you injure yourself. Also, barely making your last rep each time may cause your exercise form to deteriorate. I'm not suggesting that you should not use progressive overload or that you should never attempt single rep maximum lifts or anything like that. I'm recommending that you deliberately give your body a break regularly by using a steady state for at least several months every year. If you're kind to yourself, you should be able to lift weights into your dotage. What might steady state look like? Suppose that you stayed at doing 5 sets of 5 reps with 185 for 2.5 or 3 months. After a couple of months, doing it becomes relatively easy, and you were eager to up your squat poundage. However, you resist the temptation. You make yourself leave your ego at the door. After 3 months, though, the time was right. You put 225 on the squat bar and actually hit it. Amazing. If so, you'd end up with the same result as with the progressive resistance example, but with less chance of injury, more energy for additional exercises during workouts, and more enjoyment. During those 3 months, you may not have believed that you were growing stronger, even though you were. You were not only perfecting your exercise technique, but also you were allowing your connective tissues and bones to strengthen. Notice, not so incidentally, that steady state can work well for fitness exercise too. Some people get very fit without using high-intensity interval training or similar protocols. Steady state is less psychologically stressful. That means you're more likely to continue weightlifting for life. The equivalent of a steady state protocol can work in other areas as well. I happen to do formal meditation for a minimum of 2 hours daily. Sometimes I think I'm not pushing hard enough. However, I've heard a Zen master say multiple times that if you're working on Zazen, it's working on you, whether you realize it or not. So, if you train regularly with weights and have only ever used the progressive resistance protocol, seriously consider cycling in the steady state protocol for at least 2.5 or 3 consecutive months, once or twice a year. If you found this video helpful, please like it. If you have any comments on it based on your own experience, please leave them in the comments so that the rest of us may benefit from your experience. If you've never tried steady state strength training, you may find it very beneficial. Try it. You'll like it. Cheers.